So Donald Trump will soon be back in the White House, and he's promising to keep one of his key campaign promises of curbing illegal immigration. Now, what does this mean for Jamaicans and other Caribbean nationals who are undocumented and living in the United States? And what about us here at home? That's our topic today. Thank you so much for joining us on All Angles. I'm Dion Jackson Miller. Now, my guests today are Latoya Harridan Lodge. She's an attorney at law, joining us from Florida by Zoom. Dr. Natalie Dietrich-Jones, research fellow at the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies at the University of the West Indies, Mono. Jason Walker is radio host and president of Caribbean Georgia Votes, and Erwin Clare is managing director of Caribbean Immigrant Services in New York. So we have the diaspora covered. First, though, before we go to our guest, production assistant Cameron White has this overview.
We will use all necessary state, local, federal, and military resources to carry out the largest domestic deportation operation in American history.
President-elect of the United States, Donald Trump, speaking on the campaign trail in 2024. Mr. Trump's determination to deal with illegal immigration is not new. In 2016, he proclaimed that he would deport 11 million undocumented migrants if he became president.
We are going to end catch and release. We catch them? Oh, go ahead. We catch them? Go ahead. Under my administration, anyone who illegally crosses the border will be detained until they are removed out of our country and back to the country from which they came.
According to USA Facts, the US reported nearly 11 million unauthorized border encounters between October 2019 and June 2024. Monthly encounters peaked with over 370,000 people in December 2023. That month, Customs and Border Protection encountered nearly 12,000 people at the border every day. That's more than 8 people every minute. But Donald Trump's plan to deport 11 million migrants during his first term in office did not materialize. He has issues with both legal and illegal migrants. According to the Cato Institute, Mr. Trump entered the White House with the goal of reducing legal immigration by 63% during his first term as president. The Trump administration did reduce legal migration by 49%. Thus, in his first term, President Trump succeeded in reducing legal immigration, but did not have much success with illegal immigration. The American voters have now given him another chance. Now, Mr. Trump is promising a mass deportation policy on day one of his administration, targeting millions of immigrants and their families. The plan involves expanding deportation operations, detaining individuals in massive camps, and attacking birthright citizenship and asylum protection systems. But what is one of the reasons for this mass deportation?
Today, our cities are flooded with illegal aliens. Americans are being squeezed out of the labor force and their jobs are taken. By the way, you know who's taking the jobs that are created? 107% of those jobs are taken by illegal aliens.
With only 12 days left before Donald Trump takes office as the 47th US president, a caravan of migrants is now making its way to the US border. NBC News reported that the caravan has now grown to about 7,500 people from 24 different countries.
I think it will be much more complicated now, says this man who's traveling from Venezuela. Now we are thinking about finding a way to get through before Trump takes the presidency. DHS officials telling NBC News that they have not yet seen a surge in migrants heading to the United States, but that they want CBP and ICE officials to be prepared.
An organizer of the migrant caravan told NBC News that the migrants are from Central America, Cuba, Venezuela, and Haiti. But some come from as far as Turkey, Iran, Syria, and Cameroon. There are no reports so far of Jamaicans being involved. However, Jamaicans have been using Mexico, Panama, and Belize as ports of entry to illegally enter the United States. Jamaicans reportedly buy passage into the US through Mexico for as much as $3,000 or approximately 465,000 Jamaican dollars. A 2000 study conducted by the National Foreign Assessment Center said the English-speaking Caribbean supplies 60% of illegal migrants from the region. The Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency reports that 143 Jamaicans were refused entry into Mexico between 2018 and March 31, 2023. For the same period, just over 2,000 Jamaicans were refused entry into Panama and 81 Jamaicans were deported from the country. Reporting for All Angles, I'm Cameron White.
Thank you so much for that, Kimon. And just to remind you who we have with us, everybody's by Zoom today. So we have joining us from Florida, Latoya Harridan-Lodge. She's an attorney at law. Joining us from Kingston, we have Dr. Natalie Dietrich-Jones, research fellow at the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies at the UA. Jason Walker, a radio host and president of Caribbean Georgia Votes, and Erwin Clare, Managing Director of Caribbean Immigrant Services, which is based in New York. And I want to just go around the room very quickly, quote unquote, and ask your reaction to what we've all been hearing from Mr. Trump. And Jason Walker, let me start with you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Jamaica. Good evening, Dion. Thank you very much for having me on your show, one of my favorite shows. My reaction to this is one of extreme concern. There are families that are, I know families that are terrified of this. He's speaking of enhancing enforcement of immigrants. He's speaking of denaturalization of those who are citizens from the perspective that the process of how people became citizens was flawed and possibly illegal. He is speaking of enhancing stop and frisk, which is a problem for people who are black and of the darker hue. And so therefore, combine that with the immigration search, you know what that's going to do. I have always been legal in this country. But there was a moment when I was stopped by the police, and because they heard my accent, he immediately put me in a deportation situation. Fortunately, because I am a media person, people found out about it, and I was able to be put out of the situation. Flash forward to now, when you have the federal institution coming after immigrants in this way. Can you imagine, in stop and frisk, police officers who don't even want to really check who you are, and you don't have your papers on you, quote unquote papers on you? Yeah, and you better believe it's the dark immigrants that are going to be approached first.
All right, hold that thought for me. Lots in there I want to get into, but let me go to some of the others for their quick initial comments. Latoya Harridan-Lodge, your thoughts on what's been happening, what's been said?
Good evening, Dion. Thank you for having me tonight. My initial thoughts are, his first priority when he was in office for the first term was building a wall. Right, that was his main focus, is we need to build a wall. It is very clear that in his second term, he's focused on mass deportation. He's focused on the removal of undocumented persons who are currently in the interior. So we're looking at two separate things, two separate ideas. At first, we're trying to stop who's coming over. But right now we're trying to get rid of who's already here. And that is the part that is concerning, especially when we're talking about ending birthright citizenship, denaturalization, and militarizing a number of different units to get to have this happen. So that is the initially most concerning part.
And for you, Erwin Clare.
Good evening, Dion, to rest of Jamaica. And a great way to start up 2025, you might ask, tongue in cheek. And ditto to all that has been said before. And I'd just like to use my opening comment just to remind our international students who are here on vacation to get themselves back in the United States before the 20th of January. I do believe what Donald Trump says, all right? Whether it will happen in its entirety, I think the methodology of his vocal and his words have already defeated many, and there is absolute concern. And I think we're in the mode right now where we're preparing to adjust accordingly. And don't for 1 minute believe that people will be lying down and just handing themselves over. There are people who have fought hard to be in this country, to build this country, to make it their homes where their children are born, and they have a responsibility to that, and they won't be given up easily. So, I don't think it's a situation where Donald Trump will expect that to be a slam dunk. There will be resistance, progressive resistance, because there is another side to this. As we seek to remove those who are considered illegals, and I hate that term, the undocumented, we must understand the role that they play and how they are also the wind beneath many of the sails of those who are shouting on the top of their voices. We shall soon see.
And Dr. Dietrich Jones, your initial comment.
Good evening, Mrs. Jackson Milan. Good evening, fellow panelists. So very quickly that I agree with the comments that were shared earlier. Maybe just to add that the reaction by Trump needs to be viewed within the light of other information. The other information is that ICE deported the most number of undocumented persons last year. So I think it's 271,000 persons, so the highest in a decade. And so Trump's policy, in a way, continues a broader U.S. agenda to remove undocumented migrants from the U.S. The other thing is that other countries in the Western Hemisphere are adopting what we would probably call a restrictionist approach to immigration. And so Trump's approach should be viewed in light of restrictions coming in other jurisdictions. So when we think about Canada, that's actually reducing pathways for permanent residents. And then other steps being taken, like in the UK, which has an aggressive deportation agenda against, let's say, Black and brown minorities. So yes, it is aggressive. It has escalated because he has promised to deport the largest number in US history. I think that's what's being reported. But it certainly continues a policy approach that has defined US immigration over the decades.
Hold that thought for me. We're at break. Let's go to break and we come back and pick up so many interesting points there. I want to pick up on that issue of the U.S. policy generally, the issue of birthright citizenship. I know a lot of people have depended on that over the years, but stay tuned. We'll soon come.